Today I'll be doing another two-part series, with this one being the first one and the most disappointing rides upon my first ride. For one reason or another, these rides did not live up to the expectations set before them, and I ended up being disappointed by them. But for most of these rides, it does not mean that they are overrated and or a bad ride. It just means that my first ride, it wasn't as good as I thought, but for a lot of these, I was able to grow my beliefs on them. But enough of the yap, let's just hop right into it. Last place is Wildcats Revenge. This is a ride that you guys know is high on my list of favorite rides, so you might be asking, why is it even on this list? And the reason for that is, on my very first ride, it was unlike anything I had ever experienced, specifically the laterals and the lateral mix with airtime that made me not like the ride at first. The mix was just so unlike anything I had experienced, and the laterals are already not my favorite force when it comes to roller coasters, so at the beginning I was slightly let down. But after about 3 more rides or so, I started to get used to the ride and started to enjoy it more. The ride is now one of my favorites, but after my first ride, I wasn't blown away and didn't enjoy parts of it. 9th place is Pantheon. Now this is like Wildcats Revenge, where the ride is still one that I love, and after a couple of rides I started to enjoy it a lot more, but after my first ride I thought the ride was great, but not amazing. The part of the ride that specifically lived up to the hype was the swing launch, which I enjoyed a lot, but the part of the layout that I did not enjoy was everything like after the top hat, which was slightly disappointing. These elements just really didn't hit as hard as I thought they would, and specifically the outer bank, which I think is incredibly mid. But after I rode it a couple more times, I thought it was getting slightly better and better, but I will say the ride is still slightly overrated. Still very good, but not quite as elite as I thought going into it, which is why it's not super high on this list, but it still makes an appearance. Lightning Racer is 8th place. This ride surprisingly has a decent amount of people that like it, and the amount of people that I've seen have it creeping into their top 5 at the park, and better than their other wooden roller coaster Comet, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The first half isn't terrible, it has some nice turns and stuff, I guess, but after that, it's just one of the most boring rides I've ever experienced. It has no forces whatsoever, with no airtime, laterals, positives. It's just a lot of boring turns for like 30 seconds at low speeds. And this thing does have some potential, being that it's dueling and has some hills that could have been better. But yeah, it was just disappointing, but I didn't have a lot of expectations going in, so that's why it's not super high, but still disappointing. Next up is Dominator. First of 2 being up floorless coasters, and this one and the other one coming up later are 2 of the most talked about and enjoyed of the floorless model, but I think they're not even close to the other great B&M loopers, and it's just because the floorless model is just trash. First half is good, having an intense loop, interesting turns, and a whippy cobra roll, but after that it dies off pretty quickly. The 2 corkscrews are very headbangy, and I also don't like the final turns as well. The floorless model is just not a good model by B&M. I like the inverts, sit-downs, and wing coasters more, and Dominator was the last hope for a floorless in my opinion, since if this one wasn't good, then I just can't see any other floorless out there being that good. Apollo's Chariot is number 6. This ride is just incredibly mediocre, being the worst B&M Hyper I have ridden pretty easily, and I actually had some hope going in for this thing. The layout looked promising, being that it has some huge hills, and it being a terrain coaster is insanely cool, but sadly almost all the hills had little airtime, being like super flat, very shallow floater, to just having none at all. The best parts of the ride are the first drop, helix, and the final hill, but other than those elements, I can't think of a singular memorable moment. All of this combined just created a disappointing experience for me when I hear a lot of people talking about it, and it just didn't live up to that. First of the top 5 is Candemonium, which was the very first ride of my Hershey Park visit, and it was good, but not great, if you know what I mean. I heard many people say it was very similar to Mako, which I think it actually is in layout design, but just doesn't hit as hard. The first half has some airtime hills with some airtime that is good, then you have a twister section in the second half, which just isn't that great. I just think that the morning ride didn't help with the airtime, since it was quite light, and the second half is just not that good, just like Mako's. Now, the ride did get a lot better later when it warmed up, and it is now currently in my top 15 overall, but that first ride of the day, it felt like a very middle of the pack hyper. 4th place is Great Bear. Great Bear, don't get me wrong, is still a good ride and one that every park would love to have, and it did grow on me a little bit, but just didn't hit upon my first ride. It didn't help that my first ride was like basically first thing in the morning right after my Candemonium ride, and it was raining, but it just wasn't better than the 2 other inverts I had ridden at the time. The Immelman was mid, the loop was kind of intense, the 0G roll was solid, and the corkscrew was kind of whippy. It just doesn't have that many elements, and the ones that it did have were very middle of the pack during my ride. It did get a little bit better during my Hershey visit, like I said earlier, it did warm up a little bit, but it's still the worst inverted coaster that I've ridden. Up next is Kraken. I just don't really like floorless coasters, and like Dominator, like I said earlier, it's just like not that good. Leading up to this ride, the one floorless that I did ride was Rougarou, which was extremely alright, and I was hoping for something a little bit better since people say that this is the best floorless out there. Now, it still might be the best floorless, but man, floorless coasters, if this is the best thing that you have to offer, just being filled with very few memorable moments, it's just not that good of a model. The 0G roll was good, so was the final corkscrew, but all the other inversions like the dive loop, the 2 normal loops, were extremely mediocre and or not that intense. Plus, it had a slight rattle, which did not help at all. The weakest B&M model, and I was hoping for something, but didn't really get a whole lot out of it, sadly. The runner-up is Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. Coming into Icebreaker, I was told that it was the second best ride at SeaWorld Orlando, but it fell all the way to number 4 for me. Icebreaker, even though it is a good ride, has a short layout in my opinion, and it does have some good airtime moments, but the second half just isn't that phenomenal. The swing launch is cool, and the top hat also has some good airtime, but after that, all those small low-to-the-ground airtime hills have light floater, and it just doesn't help with those premier restraints since they're some of the worst in the game and restricts the airtime so heavily. And I rode it with the comfort collars and without the comfort collars, and yeah, it was slightly better with the comfort collars, but it really didn't help that much. Still a solid family thrill coaster with a cool swing launch, but I just didn't get the airtime that I was expecting. Number 1 for me has to go to Rapterra. How in no way is this a terrible ride? I just think that my expectations of the newest Kings Dominion ride was a huge letdown. I thought I would like this as much as Gatekeeper, which is one of my personal favorite rides. But Rapterra is just a mediocre ride with a mediocre layout with many elements like the first overbank, the dive loop, and the twisted hill, which are just not that great overall. Plus, it was rough, which makes no sense since it's a new for 2025 B&M wing coaster. Make it make sense. It makes no sense. Overall, it has its good moments with the launch and the other rolls at the end, but it was just a big disappointment for me upon my first ride, and even after a couple rides, it got slightly better, but it's just missing so much that it has to be number 1 on this list. Thanks for watching. What was the ride that disappointed you the most the first time you rode? But other than that, have a good day.